Alright, so let's do the Vastitas Borealis award analysis, and it's been a while since I do one of these, but in this video series I basically analyze all the awards on a map based on a series of criteria that I made up, and I'll go over what each of those are. I'm doing Vastitas because I've been playing it a lot lately in Board Game Arena. It's available there, and I got a good hang on it now. So anyway, let's look at the awards and then the categories. The awards are Traveler, which are most Jovian and Earth tags combined. Landscaper, which are most tiles next to each other, so like the biggest cluster of tiles. Highlander is most tiles away from oceans. Blacksmith is most steel and titanium production combined, and Promoter is most events played. And then the categories. So the ones I use for awards are Claim, which is going to be early, mid, or late. Basically how early it's usually the award is usually claimed, early being mid-game, mid being really like Gen 7 or 8, and late being the last gens. Flippability is how easy an award is to steal when someone claims it. Deviation is how much do you have to do things that are not conducing to points, basically, to steal the award late in the game. So for example, increasing money production would be high deviation because it's not useful late, whereas placing various would not because it's points, and it's usually what you do late in the game. Indicators are the things you might see in players, the things you want to look at in players to know how they're going to do late in the game on that award. Then we have the safe range early. Basically, when you're looking at a slightly after mid-game, what do you need to have as an advantage to claim safely? And then the same thing but for the last gen, so how far ahead do you want to be on that award when you're claiming on the last generation. And then we'll go over what corps have an advantage on it, key projects that might help flip or win the award, and what strategies it aligns with. So let's start with Claim. For Traveler, Traveler can be claimed early. It's basically, if you're very Jovian or Earth aligned, it's gonna be easy to know that you're winning this. Otherwise, it can also be claimed late, but it's usually one player is pretty far ahead in this one. Landscaper is more of a mid one. There are a few plays in this map where you can cut off your opponents and keep them from joining their two clusters. And also a lot of tiles are placed at the last generation, so definitely not an early one. If you're the only one going for ground game, then it's pretty safe, but that's not always the case. Highlander, it's late because this map, a lot of the tiles are adjacent to ocean, so you'll notice like I've seen this award go like 4-3 and it's really just it has a lot of tiles that are close to ocean, so it goes really late. Blacksmith is mid. This one has a few cards that help flip it. The thing is that Blacksmith is not like, usually both players will develop at least one of these two productions, and they could be closer, and it's not that cheap to catch up, so you want to wait a little. And Promoter also mid. I mean, there are games where someone has the most events, but like generally it's pretty even until mid-late game. Because even rushers that play less cards, they tend to play more events than engine players, and engine players tend to have more cards, which keeps you from really claiming it as a rusher. But yeah, let's move on to Flippability. For Travel, it's pretty low. Like if you're the engine guy with the Jovian tags, it's probably gonna be you. And yeah, to flip it, you need. There's only two cards that have two tags, which we'll go over. But there's not a lot that you can do to flip it other than play a bunch of cards. For Landscaper, it's medium, and basically the play here is being able to join clusters, which there are a few passages in the map that let you do that. But yeah, letting you join clusters is the way to flip it, and it happens maybe more often than you think. For Highlander, also medium again. There's not really a lot of cards that flip it, but the award tends to be really close, basically. It's not something that you win, 10-0 like Scientist. So it's flippable and it's very risky. Blacksmith's also medium. There's a bunch of cards that let you get cheap production late, so it is flippable. So yeah, and then promoter, pretty low. Again, you need one card for, like, you need that number of cards to flip it, if that's the advantage. So if someone's ahead by 5, they're gonna need 5 events, and events are not that common, so I went with low. Now let's talk about deviation. For traveler, it's very low. Usually Jovian cards are point cards late in the game, and that's pretty good, and you want to play them. Earth cards could be income. There's also a bunch of earth, good late game earth cards, although some of them are events. But generally you're playing the Jovians at the end and you want to keep them all, so like they're all points, so it's good. For landscaper, it's low. You might have to not place in the most optimal place, but it's still, you usually want your granaries next to your city, so it's pretty low. It's just maybe there's a nice 3 ocean spot somewhere that you're gonna have to ignore, right? For Highlander, it's actually high because you're better off placing next to oceans, obviously, right? So, you know, going for Highlander, unless they're all covered, means that you're placing in the less good places, right? So that's deviation is high. You're still placing tiles, which end of game granaries are pretty good, but yeah. For blacksmith is very high. Basically, getting production end of game is not worth it. You're paying for the award, so, and you're not gonna use the metals, so. And for promoter, it's low. There are a lot of late game events that are pretty good. And most of the expensive ones especially are point events like Large Convoy or Convoy from Europa, Important Nitrogen, so those you would play anyway. Even things like Investment Loan are great in Last Generation. All of the card draw is fine, so pretty low. You might have to play 1 or 2 events that are not great, but still. Okay, indicators. Oops. For Traveler, you definitely want to count attacks and then look at cards in hand and card draw. Usually the player with a card draw is going to win this, but obviously attacks are the main indicator. Especially the Jovians, because if you have a few Jovians, it means you want to have more Jovians. So in this, I usually would put card draw as the main indicator early in the game, but actually Jovian tags specifically are, and Earth tags are pretty combo with themselves too, right? Things like Cartel and so. But yeah, especially if someone has a bunch of Jovians, assume they have maybe a couple of Jovian multipliers, and if they have card draw, then don't go for that award, even if you're tight on tags. For Landscaper, the main thing is plant production. Plant production is what's gonna let you make your clusters, and then the second thing would be the number of tiles, actually. But plant production is more important, because if you're ahead by a couple of tiles, but your opponent is dominating the plant production, he's gonna go past you by the end of the game. For Highlander, again, same thing, plant production and tiles. Same reason, not much to explain there, it's just the way to get things late. For Blacksmith, that would be the 2 productions. Card draw might help, but it's not a huge indicator. But yeah, just steel prod and titanium prod. So really this one doesn't have indicators except what exactly is the award, so not a lot of help there. And then for events, I think the main thing is the card draw, then look at the events played, and then the cards in hand. Those are going to be the indicators in order. Again, the card draw is more relevant than events played because the card draw will keep finding events. So if you're ahead on events, but your opponent has card draw and you don't claim it. Okay, let's talk about safe ranges. And again, what I mean by this is if it's early in the game, so just past mid-game, let's say, when am I safe to claim this? For Traveler, I would say you have to be 7 tags ahead. And then even with card draw, I think you're safe. If you have card draw, you'd be safer. But that's to me the range early. You have to be 7 tags ahead. Of course, there's obviously I'm being very exact with the number. You might analyze, and it could be 6, could be 8. But I don't think less than that in the mid game is really safe, especially because people tend to save the Jovian multipliers for the end of the game. So yeah, for landscaper, you wanna. So this is formula I sort of did for the Elysium ones too. You want to have 6 combined extra between plant prod and the current biggest cluster, right? So if you have, for example, a cluster of 4, well, your opponent has a cluster of 2, and you also, so that's basically an advantage of 2, and you're also ahead by 4 in plant prod. Add up those 2 things, and if you hit 6, I think you're pretty safe. Otherwise, I wouldn't claim this, and especially look out for things like number of plant tags in your opponent, because they could have insects and stuff like that. So you have to sort of estimate what their plant prod could be. But yeah, just take off the combination of the difference in plant prod and the difference in adjacent tiles, and if it gets to 6, I think you're safe to claim that early. Same thing here, but instead of adjacent tiles, just oceanless tiles. Now don't count tiles adjacent to empty oceans, because those could become oceans. Count tiles away from the oceans, because those will for sure, almost for sure, not have oceans adjacent to it. So when I say oceanless tiles, it doesn't mean tiles that aren't adjacent to oceans yet. It's basically tiles that can never be adjacent to ocean, and same thing. The plant prod here is the key. For blacksmith, I think 5 production is pretty safe. They would need at least 2 flippers to tie it or flip it, with one exception. So I think 5 production is usually pretty safe to claim early, and honestly, because of the high deviation here, your opponent might shoot themselves in the foot trying to, like, if you see they start like catching up, you can start also keeping production cards. But yeah, because of the very high deviation, I went a little lower with the safe range, because you know, playing Vesta Shipyard late in the game is painful too, like right? So yeah, I went a little lower because just like it will hurt your opponent to try to flip it. And for promoter, I said 7 events. I don't think you can catch up. Same thing with attacks, sort of the same rationale. That's for events that are like 1 card per point for the event. I think 7 is a safe range early, but that's, you know, I'm being pretty precise. And it might be 6 or 8, right? So anyway, safe range last generation. Now I'm assuming you are tallying up all the things that are going to happen till the end of game, right? So for example, for the ground game ones, you tally up how many greeners they're going to place in last gen and after the production in the last gen, right? And then you use what I'm giving you here, not before, because obviously they can just beat you. But this is like after you've calculated everything that you can see. They might have cards that you can't see, but you have to calculate everything that you can see and then see if you're ahead by that much. I think that's the safe range. So let's start with Traveler. I'm saying 4 tags again. Joy multipliers, usually see them drop 3 or 4. Well, usually not 4, because that's a lot, but I've seen drop 3 in the last generation. And earth tags are cheap, so they can be used to flip. I think 4 tags, you're safe to take the risk. But yeah, as your opponent discards and spends more money, you can go down to 3 or 2, obviously. But if you're beginning the generation, the last generation, you want to take the award before your opponent takes another award, then I would say 4 tags is the safe range. You might be desperate and might have to take it at 3 or 2, but then there's a decent chance you get flicked. For Landscaper, I'm saying 2 tiles after you calculate everything. Now, that also includes, by the way, money and standard projects, right? Assume that if your opponent starts doing standard projects, you might have to do them too. But you both should have at least, you should be within 20 MC of each other in the last generation, which is 1 tile with a standard project, right? So it's, calculate that, but yeah, 2 tiles, usually enough. They might have things like greenhouses, but I think 2 tiles is pretty safe. Highlander, same thing, 2 tiles. Same reasons. Blacksmith, I went with 3 production. 2 is definitely not safe. There's very cheap ways to flip a 2 production award, 2 production in the last gen, so go with 3, don't go with 2 at any point unless your opponent passed, essentially. That's what I think. And for promoter, I would say 4 tags. Again, there's like pretty cheap events, things like investment loan and indentured workers. Those are things that your opponent can play to even play more events, right? So, yeah, I think 4 tags is safe because events can get really cheap and sometimes cash positive in the last generation. But anyway, yeah, 4 tags for promoter. Now let's look at corporations with advantages. There are a lot, but not. Well, it's always a slight advantage for the most part in this map. But for Traveler, we start with Point Luna. I think is the one with the biggest advantage. It has an Earth tag, and it also has a card draw ability, so that just makes you get more tags. Then Saturn Systems, it kind of detracts your opponent from playing Jovian tags, and it gives you more things when you play Jovian tags, so I think the second one. Then Terractor has an Earth tag. Spire Valley Trust, Spire draws 4 cards, so it might find more Earth tags, that's why I have it ahead. And Valley Trust draws Spilus, so it also has more Earth tags. Vitor only has the Earth tag, so that's why it's next. And then I have Tychomagnetics, which has a good card draw ability. And then finally Stormcraft, UNMI, and Terra Labs, which they have attack, but they're pretty bad generally. So I don't usually see them win this award. Okay, next up for Landscaper. The beast here is Acadian Communities. They are very good at blocking your clusters and very good at securing theirs. So even though they don't start with a tile, they're actually very good at it. Then I have Tharsis and Credicore, and I think cities are more important than greeneries when getting this award, because cities sort of like direct where you place more than greeneries. So Tharsis starts with a city and then places cheaper cities essentially and gets production from them. And then Credicore, it also has cheaper cities and cheaper greeneries. Then Ecoline and Philaris. Philaris starts with a greenery, but Ecoline usually places more greeneries altogether. Philaris' ability is also pretty good in that it keeps players from blocking you more. Then Ecotech has a plant ability, Recyclone a plant production ability, Neargal plant production, and Aphrodite, I mean, it's barely an advantage, but it does start with plant production, which is at least a tile by the end of the game usually. Okay, for Highlander it's pretty similar. It's the same thing, right? Cities are more important and they can direct you where to play. But I did move Ecoline down because Ecoline needs to rush, so it's Credicore and then Philaris, Recyclone, Ecotech, and then Ecoline instead. It's higher on Landscaper because it tends to place more tiles than the rest, but it really needs to Ocean Walk to win, so that's why I have it way lower on Highlander than on Landscaper. And then Neargal and Aphrodite as well. For Blacksmith, really Mining Guild. If Mining Guild is in the game, don't take this award. It's like a first and then a very distant second, third, fourth, right? But then Robinson Industries, they can usually get 2 to 4 production with their ability during the game, in addition to more, right? Now at the end of the game they're not so dangerous because they'll have to increase their lowest parameter, which is often energy. But they could still have still be the lowest, but still they get 3 or 4 production usually throughout the game just from their ability, so they're number 2. Factorum, just because it starts with production steel, but it also draws steel cards which produce both, so they tend to find those cards, and late in the game they're more dangerous. Manutech only has the production to start, but it's Manutech, they can actually play the production cards for money at the end of the game, so they're pretty good at it. Utopia Invest, it starts with 2 production, 2 relevant production. It also, its ability decreases the production, but you don't have to, right? You can choose to keep the award and not get the 4 titanium or whatever. So, I mean, it's less good as a corporation because of it, but yeah, you can totally choose to not to, so the 2 production is an advantage. And then the ones that start with 1 production, Point Luna, I have it ahead because it draws cards, and Saturn. Then Recyclone because it's a bit poorer, Quiper and Neural also. These three I just made the richer ones first, so but they do start with production. And finally, for Promoter, Intel Paradise Cinematics has an ability for all events, Paladin Shipping has an ability for space events, so it's a bit cheaper for them to play them, so it's good. And then I have Tycho and Point Luna, the two corporations that have native card draw. Point Luna also, like the I've seen Earth events chains at the end of the game. And there are lots of good Earth events that draw you a card, sometimes on Earth events and sometimes cheap. So these are the two card draw cards, and card draw is huge for Promoter. Now let's talk about key projects. For Traveler, there's only two projects that have two attacks: Luna Governor and Saturn Surfer. Luna Governor 2 Earth, Saturn Surfing 1 Earth, 1 Jovian. Other than that, like, it's one tag per card, and you're pretty safe usually from these two cards. So those are the only two key projects. For Landscaper, it's only Greenhouses. Is the only card that places multiple tiles end of game usually, so be on the lookout for that. Highlander, very important, Greenhouses and Artificial Lake. You should never count tiles next to empty oceans as secure. So things that place to oceans that matter for the one in Elysium, which is State Dealer, that can help you steal the oceans and set it next to your tile, don't really matter here, because you really should only claim the award based on the tiles that are away from ocean spots. But Artificial Lake actually can take away 3 tiles. So it's a huge swing. This is an award that goes with very low amounts, and so a swing of 3 is huge here. A swing of 3 is maybe rare, but a swing of 2 is pretty common, right? So if you Artificial Lake can flip this award for sure, as more than Greenhouses, because Greenhouses usually is like a greenery and a half. This is usually two spots, right? Okay, for Miner, the main card here is Lunar Mining, which gets you 1 titanium production for every 2 earth tags. It's the only thing that swings it huge. Like, it can be 5 end of game, and it aligns with Traveler, so that's the main card to look out for. Still, if you have like the 3 production, so it's only 1 card, and you have to take the award, I think you just have to hope, even if you haven't seen it in the draft. But if you haven't seen it, it should be a warning not to take it earlier, because whoever, especially if the other player has earth tags, right? So the good thing is that it's dependent on earth tags, so you can be sure that they're not gonna get a lot of it if they don't have earth tags, but it is the big swinger. After that, Asteroid Mining Consortium, not only is it a swing of 2 because it increases and decreases, but also it's a Jovian with a point, so sometimes you play it end of game, and it's cheap for a Jovian, so if this is worth 2 points, it's not even like high in deviation. So yeah, Strip Mine comes with 2 oxygen steps, so again, not huge in deviation, as long as oxygen is in maxed. And also it has 3 production total, so another swinger. And then Greatest Carbon Consortium, again a 2 swing, but it's a lot cheaper. So that's why basically you don't take this award at any point with less than 2 production, because there's a 6 MC card that can basically tie it. So and then that leaves it open. Then there's Building Industries, it's a mining quota, both give you 2 production. Earth Elevator gives you 3, but usually players will play this as early as possible, and Asteroid Mining gives you 2, but again, players will play this as early as possible, so they're less relevant. But both are point cards, so they can be saved for late. It is usually, you only see them flip it if you claim it early. If you claim it late, it's going to be more things like Strip Mine, Great Escarpment, and Asteroid Mining Consortium, and Lunar Mining. The Earth Elevator and Asteroid Mining, usually if you have them, you play them early. You would only hide them if your opponent played Blacksmith and you want to sneak it away in the last gen, right? Finally, for Promoter, there's really none. Remember, there's Astra Mechanica, which draws 2 events, but that's from your already played events, so it doesn't actually help. but there's really no way to get multiple events with one card, so yeah, there's nothing there. Just, you know, every event counts as one. Okay, finally, let's go over the alignment, which is what strategies each award aligns to. Traveler always obviously with an MC engine or a Jovian strategy, which often go hand in hand. Landscaper for ground cities and ground rush, which is usually an ocean walk. Highlander only ground cities. You can't really ocean walk and do Highlander and rush the game on the same game, so don't usually the engine player will be able to steal if you try to rush it and claim it, just because you have a couple and they don't have any tasks, but they'll have more money, so they can steal it, and you want to place next to the oceans the whole game. So only if you're doing like a ground city, less rushy and elite, more point focused, but not full engine. Blacksmith with an engine, mineral engine, obviously, and promoter. It can be an engine science or a ground rush, really. Ground rush games usually play a lot of the big space events and leave less time for the other player to play a lot of cards. And the engine science, just, you know, because you draw a lot of cards and you end up playing a lot of events. But anyway, that's all I have for the Vastitas Borealis award analysis. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.